Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week we continue to monitor the situation in Ukraine. First, the UN Secretary General's visit to Kyiv, the signing of an MOU between Ukraine and Turkey, and Russia finally given the go-ahead for IAEA inspectors to visit the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia and more. Geopolitical analyst Major Ideologue joins me from Dallas, Texas, to put it all into perspective and the strategy being used on both sides. But as usual, we start things off with a review of major news and happenings in diplomatic circles.
And I look forward.
The Canadian High Commissioner to Nigeria, James Christophe, says Nigerians in his country have made immense contribution to the country economically, culturally, politically, and socially. He made the comment when he visited the chairman, Nigerians and Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri-Rewa, at her office in Abuja. The diplomat said he was looking to working closely with the commission to collectively harness and channel the good energy for the benefit of both countries. The NIDCOM boss says Nigerians outside the country were indeed a pride to their fatherland, and that NIDCOM, through its various programs, was helping them to channel some of the positive energy back home. Conversations between the two also extended to the recent killing of two Nigerians working as guards at a nightclub in Canada.
I think the good energy that's there to the benefit of both countries.
The High Commissioner said the matter was being thoroughly investigated.
And I look forward to working with the chair over the coming months to do what we can to really bring a light to a very important part of Canada's overall cultural mosaic. I mean, we're a country of immigrants, but the Nigerian community is taking up its own place in Canada, really contributing in all aspects of our society.
Two Nigerians were killed in a nightclub in Canada, working legitimately. So I know that you've put out a case for the suspect who is in Atlanta, but we are confident that we will get justice and the culprit will be arrested and face the penalty.
Meanwhile, the NIDCOM chairman says profiling of some Nigerians stranded in Dubai is being done by the Nigerian consulate in Dubai at a holding center in the country. Mrs. Abike Dabiri-Rewa says as soon as profiling is done, the consulate and embassy will brief the Minister of Foreign Affairs and that necessary action will be taken on the next steps. She says some of them have passports, some of them don't have passports, some children in the centers have no names, some actually don't even remember the names with which they used to enter the country originally. Some may also have allegedly committed crimes and may be trying to escape, hence the profiling is very necessary. She called on Nigerians to be law-abiding and to avoid irregular migration. She says instead they should explore travel through the right channels. The daughter of an ultra-nationalist Russian ideologue who advocates Russia's attack on Ukraine was killed in a suspected car bomb attack outside Moscow on Sunday evening. Daria Dugina, daughter of prominent ideologue Alexander Dugin, was killed after a suspected explosive device detonated on the Toyota Land Cruiser she was traveling in, according to investigators. Someone who knew Dugina said the vehicle belonged to her father and that he was probably the intended target. Both father and daughter had been attending a festival outside Moscow, and Dugin had decided to switch cars at the last minute. Albania says it is investigating why two Russians and a Ukrainian had tried to enter a military factory. The Defense Ministry says two of its soldiers had been slightly injured while detaining a 24-year-old man from Russia who had entered the grounds of the Gramsh military factory and was trying to take photos. He resisted arrest and used spray against the soldiers. Two others, a 33-year-old Russian woman and a Ukrainian man aged 25, were arrested nearby.
Welcome back. Safety at Europe's largest nuclear plant in Zaporizhzhia has been of major concern recently, following attacks by either Russian or Ukrainian forces near the site. Leaders believe any attack on the plant will be catastrophic for the continent. Hence, UN inspectors want access to the site to make sure nuclear reactors and the facility is working as it should, and that safety at the plant has not been compromised. Concern over safety of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia grows, even as shelling remains unabated. On Saturday, Russia accused Ukrainian forces of another shelling on the nuclear power plant, while Ukraine said the Russian attack on the city of Voznesensk could have targeted South Ukraine nuclear power plant. Ukraine reportedly launched an artillery strike using Western long-range weapons at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant from across the Dnipro River on Saturday night. The shells exploded in front of an administrative building at the plant, causing no damage to key facilities of the plant. Work is underway to check if there are casualties. Zaporizhzhia has been controlled by Russian forces since early March, but the Ukrainian staff have continued to operate it. The shelling on the facility, of which both sides have exchanged accusations for weeks, has raised concerns of its security among the international community. The International Atomic Energy Agency said in a statement on Friday it is actively consulting with all parties concerned on sending a mission to the plant as soon as possible. Meanwhile, authorities in Ukraine's Nikopol have been preparing for emergency situations since the city lies across the Dnipro River from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, where intensified shelling has sparked concerns and fueled fears of a nuclear disaster. In Nikopol, cleanup crews have been working to sweep the streets and clear away debris left over from the shelling in recent weeks. Electricians were rewiring the neighborhood, and residents have been grappling with the situation of damaged homes. With daily shelling and growing alarm about what could happen at the facility, Nikopol officials are gearing up for the worst scenario. Emergency mobile radiation monitoring trucks have been deployed around the city to measure radiation levels if there's a suspected leak. In the event of a nuclear incident, contamination levels will depend on factors like the scope of the incident and wind direction. Concern over Zaporizhzhia also comes as the UN Secretary General and the Turkish President Recep Erdogan made a visit to the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, during the week. Turkey and Ukraine signed a deal last Thursday to reconstruct infrastructure damaged in Russia's attack. Mr. Guterres, who had arrived on Wednesday, met Presidents Volodymyr Zelensky and Recep Erdogan, with grain exports and concerns over Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant leading the agenda. The trilateral meeting marked President Erdogan's first in-person discussion with President Zelensky since Russia's invasion on February 24, although the Turkish leader has met Russian President Vladimir Putin twice in recent months. President Zelensky later said he agreed the parameters of a mission of the International Atomic Energy Agency to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant at talks on Thursday with Mr. Antonio Guterres and President Erdogan. He later told a news conference after the talks in Lviv that Russia should immediately withdraw its forces and stop shelling from the nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine. He also said that a full withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukrainian territory must come before peace talks between Russia and Ukraine were to take place. The UN Secretary General then called for the demilitarization of the plant in Zaporizhzhia, saying he was gravely concerned by the situation in and around it. He said military equipment and personnel should be withdrawn from the plants and called for efforts to ensure it is not the target of military operations.
I remain gravely concerned about the unfolding situation in and around Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia. Common sense must prevail to avoid any actions that might endanger the physical integrity, safety or security of the nuclear plant, and the facility must not be used as part of any military operation. Instead, agreement is urgently needed to reestablish Zaporizhzhia as purely civilian infrastructure and to ensure the safety of the area.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said he discussed possible ways of ending the war between Ukraine and Russia in the trilateral meeting with President Zelensky and Mr. Guterres. He said they also discussed the positive atmosphere created by a UN-brokered grain export deal to establish lasting peace, and that they also discussed the exchange of prisoners of war between Ukraine and Russia, and that he will later raise the issue with Russian President Vladimir Putin. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said the U.S. was deeply concerned about Russia's military presence in Zaporizhzhia, near the nuclear plant, and that the International Atomic Energy Agency should be granted access to the facilities where the U.S. government is aware of reports that Russian personnel have abused and coerced members of staff. Russia, which captured the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant soon after its February 24 invasion of Ukraine, said it could shut down the facility, a move Kyiv said would increase the risk of a nuclear catastrophe. Moscow had earlier rejected as unacceptable international calls for a demilitarized zone around the plant, which is still operated by Ukrainian engineers under Russian occupation. The power station sits on the Russian-controlled south flank of a huge reservoir. Ukrainian forces hold the north. Joining me now is Major Adebayo Adeleke. He's a geopolitical analyst and also a U.S. military veteran. Thank you for joining me on Diplomatic Channel. I know we've spoken a few times.
Thank you, Amarachi. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about Ukraine, aren't we? Russia agreeing to the IAEA inspectors approaching the nuclear plant in Zaporizhzhia. Do you trust that Russia would keep its part of the deal and provide the necessary protection for these inspectors, enough to be able to do their work?
Absolutely, I believe so. I think at this point in time, I think Russia have to act in good faith. Reason being, there's a lot of propaganda being thrown from both ends, both from the Ukrainian hand and also the Russian hand. And this is probably one of the few occasions that a middleman, which in this case is the International Atomic Agency, coming in to kind of inspect the nuclear reactors at their nuclear site. So this will give international community an opportunity to see if what Russia has been postulating over the course of time is actually true or false. So we'll see. But I mean, to be honest with you, I do not believe wholeheartedly. I do not believe that Russia is going to do anything crazy, because it doesn't benefit them in any shape or form. And for them to continue to have some kind of seat among the League of Nations or whatnot, I don't believe that they will. I think they will hold on. I think they will hold the hand of their bargain in making sure that these inspectors come in to inspect these nuclear reactors and then and see where it goes from there. I think it's for them also to show the world that they have been a good, they're gonna be a good player in making sure that they can see to the end of this conflict.
My interview with Major Adeleke continues after the break. Stay with us. And now back to my interview with Major Adeleke on the situation in Ukraine 6 months after Russia's military operation began there. Yeah, Russia is trying very hard to be transparent to the rest of the world. But Ukraine, understandably, is jittery, about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, because it is the largest in Europe. And it's the largest when it comes to nuclear energy supplies. There is so much that could go wrong if anything goes wrong in Zaporizhzhia, right? So do you think that Russia could be using this as a bargaining chip, one step advantage over the rest of Europe, especially in this war?
It's very critical. At the beginning, and I think look at what Russia has been trying to do in annexing Ukraine is by just from a strategic point of view, you want to take their ports, you want to kind of take their roads network, take their power units, and that's what is playing out in over there already. That's why they kind of annexed at the beginning. I think they've had this nuclear site in sight for quite some time right now, and they've been, from what I read, they've been using it to stockpile a lot of weapons, and they'll be able to launch from there, knowing fully well that Ukrainian is not going to be able to retaliate. But now they're also saying that Ukrainians have been launching on their side, actually, so that it can, there's conflicting news coming from there. But from Russian perspective, it makes sense, because if I really want to squeeze, just like a python, if I really want to squeeze my victim, I will take away, I'm gonna just shock and all. It's just from any modern nation that want to kind of handicap another nation. You take away their communication, you take away their power, you take away their transportation, you take away their logistics or supply chain nodes. And this is what Russia is trying to do with the nuclear plants. And knowing fully well, this is the largest nuclear plant in Europe. Knowing fully well that winter is coming. I think about 6 out of the 15 reactors in the Ukraine, about 6 of them is in and also you have about, from what I'm reading, is about 2 or 3 reactors are actually working. So it's going to be quite interesting, because the other reactors are not working. I don't know how the rest of the people in that area is going to face, depending on how this winter is coming their way in a couple of weeks, or not in few weeks, actually, because they see winter earlier. In a few weeks, how this thing is going to how they're going to hold up. So it's very crucial. It's really very crucial. And also, beside what is going on in the nuclear side as well, what's Russia going to do with the nuclear side? Are they going to cut it off? And what does that mean for the rest of Ukrainian folks over there being disconnected from the power from the nuclear grid? How is that going to affect the energy consumption coming up in the winter? That's another thing. That actually should be the biggest concern going forward.
Yeah, and Russia already is holding the rest of Europe ransom to its gas and other energy supplies, because it wants them to pay in rubles. But I'm also glad that you mentioned weapons and the stockpiling of weapons. And, those attacks on the Russian side, especially in Crimea. Twice now we've seen attacks on Russian war weapons depots in Crimea. First of all, it was an air base, and then it was a weapons depot in Crimea. Ukraine has neither confirmed nor denied this, but do you think that those attacks are coming from Ukraine?
Probably, or Ukrainian sympathizers as well. I mean, you have to continue to hit. See, this is very interesting. Like I said in my last time I was on this show, is that it's a battle of the will. Russian is a very conventional military. They move in that sense, and Ukrainian are very decentralized and very guerrilla work tactics. So they have the maneuverability advantage over the Russian, though they might not have weapon superiority, but they have the maneuverability advantage. I mean, they can maneuver, they can do whatever. Before you see them, they already disappear. That kind of is like dribbling a basketball. So that's what you're seeing playing out in Crimea, and they will continue to do that. And of course, they haven't denied or condemned the attack or whatnot. So of course, Russia should not be bombing themselves. That's fratricide. But for what is what, I mean, what advantage will Russia actually bomb themselves? It's not part of the Russian, but they continue to create nuisance. They continue to they continue to create nuisance for Russian military, and that is what guerrilla war fighting tactics is, and that's oftentimes actually works, because you kind of destabilize the conventional war fighting tactics of the Russian military.
Yeah, but how long? It's taken so long. I mean, this week will make it 6 months since this war started. I know Ukraine is planning celebrations for its Independence Day. They're also being very careful, though, because they think that Russia could be planning attacks on that day. While that may be a possibility, why do you think it's taking Ukraine, if it is behind the attacks, this long, to take the fight to Russia, not just fighting it in Ukraine?
Yes, because oftentimes, you have to understand, why did it take U.S. government, God knows, over a decade to, in both Iraq and Afghanistan, despite the fact that U.S. has superiority in all facets. It just doesn't work that way when it comes to warfare. The enemy has a vote in such a way that they also have, the counter. You can't just mow over them, mow everything. There's a lot of things in play. And the same thing goes to Russia, too. They can't just do whatever they want to do in Ukraine. There's a lot of things they have to navigate in combat. And for Ukraine, they have to understand their enemy first. They probably have seen the worst that Russia can throw out. Now they feel comfortable and they feel like they can actually take the war to them. And I think what better way to do it than to start being a nuisance to them in their own backyard. So this is this is quite interesting for them because they don't have superior. I mean, look at there's a lot of disparity from weapons to the amount of boots on ground needed to fight this war. I mean, Ukraine has always been at the opposite end of it. They've always been at the losing end of the stick. So for them to actually gather their strength together, at some point, a lot of people have already counted Ukraine out of this fight. But because of their resilience, they're able to bounce back. And now it seems them actually taking the fight to them. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but at least they've created some kind of nuisance to the Russian military, and that's what they need to do to destabilize them. I mean, with destabilizing a conventional military like Russia, it really makes a big deal because now you start prolonging the fight. When you start prolonging the fight, it becomes the battle of the will. It becomes the battle of the will. Whoever holds that willpower will probably be the one that will last it. As you can see in most things, Russia left Afghanistan, US left Afghanistan. It's all a battle of the will at this point. And it's not like they have anything superior, anything greater than the Russian to offer. It's just that they will not just be defeated in their own country.
So Russia has been accusing the U.S. of aiding Ukraine to fight this war. It's saying the U.S. has been providing Ukraine weapons to fight against Russia. Where do you draw the line on morality on this war? I mean, you don't expect Ukraine to sit and wait to be attacked by Russia. It has to fight back, right? And we already know that the U.S. is an ally of Ukraine. So help us understand, what Russia really is saying here when it's accusing the U.S. of providing Ukraine with weapons to fight against Russia.
I don't think U.S. have ever actually disputed that or they've made that one a secret. I think they all know that U.S. and the rest of the Western world have been providing Ukraine for it. Though, I mean, they consider Ukraine an ally, so they will continue to do so in any shape or form. They might not be, Ukraine might not be accepted in European Union and every other unions out there, but they consider them an ally because of their democratic leaning. So, but that's going to happen. And I've shared this view as well. At the moment, Ukraine allowed this war to start on their own soil. They pretty much, from my point of view, they pretty much lost. But at the same time, there's something to say about their great ability to fight back because a lot will have been done to avert this. But now it's already done. It's not there or there. They have to fight it. But the U.S. government is a proxy war. And unfortunately, the rest of the nations are fighting on your soil. So you have to either pick with the lesser of the two evil. And from a Ukrainian standpoint, it's the Western world. And I don't think the U.S. has really, have denied it. I think they will continue to do that. And I don't know, to be honest with you, I really don't know what Russia is trying to say. That if U.S. is not supporting Ukraine, that they will have just walk over Ukraine. I don't think so. I think the Ukraine, there's a lot. U.S. will have provided as many weapons as possible, but they still need people on ground to fight the war. So in as much as Russia wants to blame their inability to be able to, hand this war fast to Ukraine, but you have to give Ukrainian forces and the people of Ukraine credit for them to be able to stand their own ground, regardless of, weapons do kill, but somebody has to fire that weapon to kill. So does that make sense?
Well, this war itself really doesn't make sense if you ask me. But thank you again for explaining to us. Yeah, and we really do hope, the war ends soon. At this point, no one really is winning. Thank you for joining me again, Major Adebayo Adeleke, and for your analysis.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is where we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll join me next time. I'm Amarachi Ubani. See you then.